Dive heroes are much easier in Marvel Rivals than they are in other hero shooter games. A good portion of the heroes fit this classification of aggressive mobility heroes who can take fights effectively where you thought you were safe and very quickly take over the entire game if left unchecked. Today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into countering dive heroes as a concept, what fundamental mistakes that they're looking to exploit in your gameplay, how to shore those up, and a slew of different heroes that you can swap to improve your odds against the relentless aggression of dive heroes. First, let's classify dive heroes and their strengths. Their mobility lets them take engagements in creative positions that would normally be unsafe for other heroes. Typically in hero shooter games, character kits will have a power budget, as it's dangerous for balance for any character to do too much of anything. Divers tend to need to close the distance and lack ranged options, and sometimes might lack either sustain or damage, but due to their high movement, they have the skill set to work together, making them strong at coordinating to attack backliner characters especially. Snipers and low mobility supports are the best to target because their health points are lower than the tanky vanguards in the front line. So the basics of the playstyle is they want to circumnavigate the front line, relentlessly attack the back line before the enemy can react, and once they have a man advantage, their lower brawling stats tend to not matter. This is a style that's called back to front, which means you're aiming to target the enemy's backline characters first and ignore the tanks, unless they're out of position, which is the first major mistake that sets up dive to be effective. Any character, from any role really, that goes in too early or off on their own is prone to being dove. And typically the equation from a macro standpoint goes like this. If the enemy has more mobility than you, if you take an off angle or a cheeky flank with a low mobility character, they will always win because they can use their movement to pounce you quicker than you're going to be able to get help from your team. The most simplest form of this is a support who's lagging behind the team. Separated and isolated makes you easy prey for dive characters. And the other major mistake that I see all of the time, it's very, very common in Marvel Rivals, even more than splitting off on your own, it's using your cooldowns too early. The problem is, in Marvel Rivals, in typical death ball battles, you're going to be incentivized to stat farm, throw your cooldowns out early and often right at the front line, trying to farm as many numbers as you can. The SR system rewards you for that. In a lot of ways, a lot of the brawl-tastic death ball v death ball gameplay also rewards that. But smarter players can exploit this by understanding push-pull, which is something dive characters do well. Push-pull in hero shooters is a way of tracking the advantage versus disadvantage states you're in. Everybody knows that Luna ult makes you invulnerable, and what low-rank players think they can do is use Luna ult very early to have 12 seconds of immortality, run at the enemy, they will stay there, die no matter how bad their team is, face smash the enemy with their support ult, then easily win. But what dive characters are adept at doing because they have mobility is dodge that type of all-in ult engage. When the enemy uses their power and you use mobility to dodge it, wait it out, then go back in, it's a massive whiff rope-a-dope. And support players are making mistakes like this in Marvel Rivals en masse. The most common one and easy one for me to read is cloak and dagger players, who are death ball style AoE healers that feel incredibly easy to dive until I get to like the top 1% of the player base. Here playing Hulk, I'm working the perimeter slowly and reading the cooldowns of the enemy. Every time the enemy cloak uses her bubble, that's 12 seconds she can't cast it again, and that means fighting anything elsewhere is going to be at a big disadvantage. No more squids are on a similar cooldown. So if I, as a dive character, dodge engaging when they're using their best cooldowns and fight in the windows of time between that, I have a massive advantage. Hero shooters often could be thought of like card games. There's certain move sets or abilities or cards that you have that you can use infinitely. Hulk's leap and fists doesn't have a cooldown. He always can use them. But the enemy's anti-dive kit to protect themselves and heal with cloak bubble or to ward me off with Namor turrets are limited. The way you can think about the exchange is if I use an infinite resource to drain out a finite resource, then I can use my cooldowns to finish the fight, going in and committing with my bubble, or even overcommitting against the cooldowns that normally would counter me when I have my ultimate. If you watch carefully, this enemy cloak and dagger uses her bubble on their side of the map constantly, early in the fight, almost immediately. Same with the Namor. So even though those cooldowns in theory should ward off a dive character, because the fight's not committed, I can choose not to engage into them, and the enemy almost never gets to advance. Dive characters often throw off the enemy because they're not used to having to contest the ground, like for example, fighting out of their spawn, and they're more used to the standardized fights in the chokes they're familiar with. But dive puts you on the back foot and forces you to respond appropriately, holding your tools to survive at any moment. So if those are the mistakes of support, let's show some examples of using our cooldowns correctly to ensure we don't get overwhelmed by dive. Here's a scene that keeps strategist players up late at night screaming in a cold sweat. An unmarked duelist going for an all-in for an easy cleanup kill on a support. While it's incredibly stressful to have to defend yourself in a 1v1 as a strategist, it also does put a lot of carry potential in your hands. Your first priority is to not die immediately, so I'm going to cast the snowball to freeze the Iron Fist over and over again, expecting that to be my primary focus. Keep in mind you can use your movement and your aim to help landing your shot. You want to be moving with them. Once they hard commit into you and you have your ice ball available, you're happy to take that fight. Once I use my primary dueling cooldown, I'm looking to run to safety. Luna can use her ice skates and super jump to create distance, or her clap attack to heal herself while healing and damaging the enemy. But neither are as strong as freezing a diver. So the way to path in to guarantee safety is to expect those core cooldowns to be the way you extend to cross distance. If every time you cross the street, you get dove, you don't cross unless you have your key cooldown available to use to punish that. That information is what makes that cloak and dagger that I picked on as Hulk such an egregious mistake. Another good principle to keep in mind is simply spacing, which is the relationship of your position to either your team or the threats. Rocket has the benefit from healing from range, so as the enemy aggression comes in, if I play offset from the target that they're trying to go after, I keep myself safe so that I bait my Punisher, pocket him as hard as I can, and importantly, drop the infinite ammo for him when the fight is committed. Because that's my most impactful play, is that timing, because it allows the Punisher to shoot the shotgun repeatedly, making it a lot harder to dive and overwhelm him. And with the wall climb, I can use the pillar as cover and keep supporting from safety. And to apply this principle to lots of different characters, try to think which hero on your team is the biggest threat to the enemy. Punisher's a great example because he's got really high DPS, but is a focus fire target. But it's going to change depending on the matchup. Prioritizing keeping that target alive is going to be your safety net. And while in Rivals, a lot of times it feels like you should just try to heal everybody all the time, and just more overall team healing stats is important, even if you lose the fight. I'm going to tell you that's not actually true. What's better, if you have the game knowledge to know which teammate is in the core position to turn the fight, with win condition abilities such as Punisher's ultimate, prioritizing healing that player over a teammate that's either struggling or on a less useful pick will help guarantee the win, as well as just keep you alive in general. Another tip is to just get in cover where possible, because a lot of supports can do quite a lot to help their team still while hiding in cover. But if you stand out in the open, more of the enemy will know where you are, drawing attention to yourself. Which maybe if you're playing Mantis, you are happy to duel any comers, but other strategists will do well to hide and allow a different target to be the focus so that you can heal them in crossfire rather than needing to defend yourself. And you can use third person to be a major asset for you to do this, because you'll have the information of where everybody is while you're safely hiding and 3Ping around a corner. And the last point I want to make is your mobility cooldowns are also an escape. You might have a bad habit of spamming either your rocket dashes or your transform into cloak and dagger, when really those are escape buttons to press once the enemy aggresses onto you. And what's actually better is to walk forward into the fight, be ready with your escape hatch, and as they aggress, escape to the next bit of cover. That will make it expensive for them to close the distance to get onto you, and the more you repeat that, the more your team can win the push-pull trade to victory. Now let's talk about the tank point of view. A big percentage of tank players in Marvel Rivals don't seem to know what the word peel means. There's several frontliner tanks in the game that are very good at contesting the main angle in the front line, manipulating the enemy's formation, playing deathball v deathball. Strange, Magneto, and Groot come to mind as very common frontliners that stay in the front line all the time. But when you're up against dive threats, try to forget the hero matchups and the typical play patterns. None of that matters. In hero shooters, the only thing that matters first and foremost is stabilizing the team formation. And in many cases, the dive characters on the enemy team are feeding. 1 or 2 players in your backline should be a free kill for you, no matter what characters you're playing, if you simply turn and deal with them. A lot of duelists in your backline are difficult to be healed by the enemy supports in their backline. So while I don't suggest you play Strange into dive in Season 2 because they've nerfed his damage to oblivion, what I do want you to look at is how I peel back on each engagement. So whether you're on Mag, Groot, Strange, these frontliner type characters, it is not your job to hold the cart, it's to stabilize and protect. As I peel back, I look to see where my cloak puts her bubble to fight inside it. I try to get hits on their damage and parry back so we can reestablish laning the enemy's damage. A lot of very bad dive players, particularly dive duelists, get wins in Marvel Rivals simply because the tanks don't peel for them. And if you peel as any tank, to remember that your supports can't heal you if they're fighting for their lives, and instead stack on top of them, which means to literally hold their hand, not push in, not press the cart, hold your hand like you're being a gentleman for an elderly woman crossing the street. The simple focus fire and teamwork alone will beat most dive characters. And then the next step is to learn how to play the Thing, the best peel tank in the history of hero shooters. My God, do I love playing the Thing. His entire kit is built for countering dive. High damage, durable, immune to knockback, applies defense to an ally, can counter the enemy's mobility tools so they can't get away, and has a stun with his ultimate. In this opening attack, I am excited to play the Thing to run in on the front line, and I'm trying to read what the enemy has. Apply some defense to my front line so that we can eat the squirrel damage instead of my supports, but then I realize, oh gosh, we're playing against dive, we're down a man immediately. But rather than be upset, I am smiling ear to ear because between Emma Frost and the Thing, we have the perfect combination of characters to deal with dive. Emma, playing in the similar type of position that I told you to do peeling with Strange, has a choke slam that can set up dive characters for immense follow-up. The Thing wants to find the vulnerable ally that's about to be targeted and cast his shield on them right before the damage comes in, making them more durable. His charge will knock up the enemy, disorienting them, but more importantly, if you land the slam, you're going to give them earthbound, which means they can't use their mobility to escape. Landing that can be absolutely devastating against characters like Venom and Spider-Man that are used to web slinging away to safety. But it takes a little bit of finesse in order to land it. You can accidentally knock up the enemy with the charge itself outside of the slam range, so avoid doing that, or at least curve the corner so that the slam can land when they're not too high in the air. I find brawling as the Thing. The ult fire is overall more damage, but it has a wind up, so that makes it somewhat harder to hit. However, it has a massive vertical hitbox. So even characters that are jumping above you, try to line it up in their vicinity, and you'll get a lot more connections than you expect. Otherwise, as characters are quickly crossing your path, you can use the primary attack because it's just a little bit more reliable to land as things are moving quickly. And especially when you earthbound a target, it becomes incredibly easy to hit them with the clobbering time to guarantee that you'll be able to beat them down. Quick pause to let you guys know that if you like my coaching style, you can get private coaching from me for either Overwatch or Marvel Rivals. You can sign up by using my calendar linked in the description. The Thing is better at it, but the Hulk can also have a peel-focused playstyle as well against these enemy melee characters. I made this enemy Magic's life miserable by targeting her non-stop, timing a key bubble on my Rocket Raccoon as she all-ins to kill him. The Thing is a bit more potent in this type of position, but there's advantages to the Hulk because he's got unique team-ups, can be played more aggressively himself. His ultimate is generally more defensive. Clobbering Time has some very guaranteed kills, but it kind of requires you to be in position, whereas Monster Hulk can go get the kills, but also is an extra health bar. Hulk Bubble has more interactions against ultimates, and his freedom of movement is just a lot better, so you can play aggressive or even just for yourself since the bubble goes for him too, without needing a teammate. But Hulk is kind of my main hero, so maybe I'm just justifying him to have every playstyle, because I do think he does. One thing I do think the Thing does better though, Wolverine is an anti-tank dive hero, so kind of weird in that regard. While Hulk can exile him and play keep away, the Thing I would say is just straight up better at fighting him, because he can't be knocked back anyway. When trying to decide between the two, I think the Thing is a lot more reliable, a bit easier to play, but also with a bit less upside and less flexibility on where you can position. But both of them, especially with the help of an Emma, who my teammates have been running in these examples as well, gives you the options of two very good anti-dive vanguards. And between the stuns, disables, melee mobility, and health for you to chase them down, these vanguards offer a way for you to put a man-on-man defense on these aggressive melee diver DPS that otherwise can farm your strategists. Another playstyle for you to consider with Hulk is the team up with Namor, which empowers his squids. But rather than the superior ice squids from the previous season, Gamma squids need to rack up damage over time, so they're not as good against flankers, despite Namor being good against divers in general. This round, I have a very different type of team against two diver-style characters, Star-Lord and Wolverine. But I've got Mag, Iron Man, and Namor, so that guarantees I'm playing the Peel style, because if I were to dive, I would be doing it on my own. This is a comp that was similar in Overwatch at different pro stages of the game, where I like to call it poke control. Jeff, Mag, Namor, Iron Man are all poking, which is a huge ranged advantage against the opponents, as especially their duelists need to close the distance, fighting into our crossfire, and the longer that takes, the more likely we're going to land a play or get a pick. And so in this instance with the push-pull, I do a lot more AFK, holding a corner, waiting for my poke to establish the tempo of the fight, and then making repositioning decisions as the fight continues, following up on the Namor ult, or bubbling my damage as they're taking a fight. In this instance, I'm not protecting my supports because the play is focused on my damages angle. The enemy has to clear my damage with how aggressive they're playing. So it's best to put the resources to support them, because things like a double bubble on a Iron Man ult is actually unstoppable. Now let's give you some options as a duelist yourself up against dive heroes. This is a game that I turned around. We were getting blown out, but the enemy Black Panther was living rent-free in our backline. So now I'm gonna go Star-Lord, who is a great anti-flank type character because he's got medium to close range damage, great distance control, and insane mobility. What I'm looking to do is clear the different flank angles, use my dodges to avoid getting targeted myself while poking down those threats and dividing and conquering the map. It's the same Peel idea as on Hulk and Thing, but as a duelist, I have the freedom to go a little bit farther on the map, flank at a greater distance, play around health packs a little more, looking to play anti-dive. While going aggressive to get KOs on Strategist certainly is a high up trade, and a decent idea considering we're on attack and have a respawn advantage, that strategy is often called base trading, or trading backlines, which is to say, I won't defend my backline, they'll probably die, and I'll go try to kill theirs faster. Certain characters are better at doing that than others. Keep in mind, Black Panther does more damage as he goes low HP, and typically, as I've seen him played at the highest levels of play, Star-Lord is a bit more front to back of a character, whereas Psylocke, Spider-Man, Black Panther, like that, are more back to front. So keep that in mind. In theory, you can counter dive by diving faster and harder to the enemy, but that's not what this guide's about today. Key Star-Lord tip, by the way, is you can use the fly in combination with his spin attack, allowing you to track and hunt down targets as they're running away. Incredibly effective against mobility characters that are hard to lock down. But that's why I'm also going to suggest the queen of locking down high mobility threats, Scarlet Witch, the most underrated duelist by far. While she has fall-offs in the top percentages of play, for sure, for the vast majority of players, she's very effective, particularly against Spider-Man, who has a very small hitbox, and unless your hit scan aim is very good, he can be very hard to hit. But Scarlet Witch can beam him down rather easily. Also, she has a natural counter to him because he needs to web you in order to do his distance closer combo attack. Her fade cleanses that, or can just dodge the attack entirely. She can use her fade to hover and fly in the air a little bit as well, so oftentimes she can just nope out of the all-in engages that these diver-style characters like to go for. Especially fighting above melee characters is quite devastating. Her stun is a little difficult to use, but devastating when you land it. It's an AoE spell field that can hit them multiple times, but they have to fight into it. So try to place it either at your feet or your support's feet to protect them as that dive is coming in. 1 or 2 stuns landing likely means that target is gonna die. Scarlet Witch did get a team up in season 2 and some rebalancing to her ultimate and damage numbers. I actually think that made her a little bit weaker for this playstyle that I'm suggesting, and the DPS from the team up is a bit more required for her to function, but a lot of the principles still remain the same. I have a lot more I could say about Scarlet Witch. Do not sleep on her just because the streamers of our game at the top 0.1 percentile are correct in saying that she has fall off and isn't so useful there. For the average player, she's one of the best anti-dive tools in the game. I almost never get to play against Spider-Man due to how effective it is for me to swap to Scarlet Witch and mark him and make his life miserable. There's another class of duelists we'll talk about now, the turret character. Namor actually has turrets, but a ranged DPS can ironically be very good against dive because one of dive's weaknesses is taking poke damage before they close the distance. So in theory, if you have top tier aim, you could use Hela to poke out a Spider-Man before he gets on you, despite her also being a dive target. Namor though is this idea on easy mode. While the ice turrets were certainly much better against dive in season 1, with a ranged attack and applying a slow, Namor's kit in general is still a very good anti-dive option. Remember the rule set of holding onto your cooldowns until the fight's actually committed? Especially important for Namor, as his alternate fire will do an empowered attack with his turrets locked on to a diver. That's incredible. If you get caught out, use your bubble to escape if you either can get healed or even just to dodge an attack and reposition entirely. It's okay to shoot the tank when there's nothing else to do, but as soon as those squishy diver DPS characters come through to the backline, be sure to focus them down first. A couple more backliner characters for you to consider because you do need someone to deal the damage. A problem with picking too many defensible heroes is that you often lack the high damage numbers that are required to clear a Venom. Punisher is the easiest route to be able to look forward and deal immense damage values. Another one I'd add in is Bucky. A little more technical to play, but with a ranged crowd control, he can really be devastating to dive with a bit of teamwork. I think Punisher's a bit easier to play, and a big percentage of players seem to not respect his turret, which has to be poked out or flanked. And you can afford to be kind of far from the battle with it, as it has explosive rounds that can explode on the ground, and it becomes more accurate the longer you shoot it. Even applying pressure at range, but especially if they commit on you badly, you'll just mow down anything. A good number of dive threats don't have the kind of defenses that are required to withstand the Punisher turret. But otherwise, be quick to master both the smoke screen and the zip line. The smoke nade has him leap away a little bit, so use that to reposition. Also, you can have zip lines set up beforehand to quickly scurry away when you get targeted. However, I will say the detection and reliability of the zip lines in the game is a bit sus. They can tend to be unreliable, but careful and precise shotgun aim on these close range characters can really force them to sit down and be humble. But you'll surely want to be close to your supports because Punisher is not hard to hit when he's on the ground. And in fact, in a lot of duels, it's important to actually walk towards the danger to make the shotgun do as much damage as possible to quickly two-tap the target before they can start pulling out their cooldowns, which will be more dynamic than yours. A little bit of an extra credits section. Let's talk about Penni Parker. Penni is a strange character because on one hand, she's a noob trap, and on the other hand, she has some skill sets that you can use to get to the highest tiers if you master them. But today I'm just going to talk about her base standard gameplay, as I think in general, the Thing is just a much more reliable version of doing her job. When you're playing against a bunch of characters that want to melee all in you, you can slow them down by playing inside of a penny nest. Try to put it on your supports or on your backline safely so the enemy can't clear it. The enemy team is running Thor, Captain America, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. So they don't really have any poke to clear out my nest. So I'm trying to put it safely around a corner and then extending its range by putting web on the floor on their likely path that either they have to clear or where I would like to be standing anyway. The strongest thing Penni does otherwise is landing her stun. So try to hit the stun as many times as you can. Really short cooldown, just spam it out constantly, as a quick stun on the enemy helps your team react and lock down these fast divey threats. Wolverine is still a major threat to you as Penny, but if you play on a back foot posture rather than trying to press in, he's got to come grab you, and just be ready with your stun whenever possible in order to try to stop his follow-up or his grab altogether. It's important to note that the spider nest takes time to spawn the spiders, so you're going to have to protect it for a while before it's maximally effective. But once it is, between putting mines that are hidden inside the web and then the spiders to come follow up, Penny's damage against these dive threats can be immense. And while there's some high skill ceiling expression with her movement, repositioning, again, the thing will just do a lot of this easier. Though I will say I do get some sort of sick satisfaction with setting up an aggressive nest in a position the enemy can't clear, then slowly working them down, flushing them into my trap while I secure the retreat lane. Then on the attack against dive, oddly enough, this is where I suggest you be a little bit more aggressive to take away the staging or retreat positions. Dive characters like to stage from high ground, get a vantage point, look where the enemy is, then go at your backline. And if you're riding the cart always expecting to be able to catch the dive from that position, you're always on the back foot. Whereas Penny has the health to go take positions that are either retreat lanes or the high ground, and then parry back if you need to. A key part of Dive's sustain loop is that they want to go in aggressively on your backline and then use their tools to get out. Here, staying Penny on the attack, I'm preemptively denying their retreat paths, guaranteeing that my team will be able to hold a position of advantage, and as I keep poking, we'll get an advantage over time. The enemy just swaps off their dive DPS eventually. So annoyed playing against the Penny. Don't know what to do. I go 21-1. I mean, a lot of these games are low death. I'm a pretty passive player, but that's a devastating scoreline to see from a Penny. Well, guys, that's everything I have for the complete how to counter dive video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when my videos come out. If you'd like to sign up for private coaching for either Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, click my calendar link in the description. That's been it for me. I've been Frito. I'll see you guys next time.